30 kilometres west of Rome, this man-made lake is the most visible reminder of one of the wonders of the ancient world. It was at the heart of the port of Rome, the dynamic hub of a trading system that extended from India to the furthest reaches of the empire.
Portus must be one of the most important archaeological sites in the world. There was only one ancient Rome, and Rome only really had one imperial port. Portus was that port.
Portus was an immense complex of granaries, warehouses, military encampments, administration blocks and, at its centre, a huge palace. For centuries, this unique site has fascinated collectors of ancient artefacts. But until recently, little was known about how it was run, who lived here, or even why it is where it is.
No one's actually ever excavated this port. Records going back to the 19th and 18th century are fascinating because they tell us all about the discovery of statues and inscriptions and columns. But we don't know where they've come from, we don't know what the palace itself looked like. So when we started this project, there was a sense of trepidation. What are we going to find?
Now, an international team of archaeologists led by the University of Southampton are set to reveal their findings and unveil a fabulous, newly unearthed relic of the ancient port. After 10 years of study centred on the palace complex, their discoveries have much to tell us about the development of the port and about the daily lives of the people who lived and worked here.
Their job would have been to have kept track of the different cargoes that were coming in, carrying grain from Egypt or North Africa, olive oil and fish sauce from other parts of the Mediterranean, keeping track of the different volumes of cargoes and so on.
The failure of these supplies could mean disaster for the emperor.
We know that when the grain wasn't imported, when there was a shortage of grain, there were riots in the city. And okay, there is a military presence always in the capital, but sometimes the position of the emperor himself can become threatened. So it was very much in the emperor's interest to ensure that there was a regular supply of grain.
And emperors may have stayed at Portus.
It seems likely that the first emperor perhaps to use this was perhaps one of the most travelled of all Roman emperors, which was Hadrian. He spent much of his reign travelling to different parts of the empire. And so it would seem understandable to expect the emperor to have come through this port. It was the obvious thing to do.
Investigations at Portus, including geophysics, surveys and coring, as well as excavation, all add to our understanding of the port. Back at the University of Southampton, this information is used to create new virtual three-dimensional models.
A lot of the techniques that we use, we're borrowing from other disciplines. So a clear example might be architecture. Architects are interested in how people move from one space to another. What we do is apply the same kinds of models based on people being roughly the same size and shape and giving them specific tasks that are appropriate to the past. So move all the materials from the harbour side here, through the building and move them outside to be shipped somewhere else. It gives us a little bit more information than we have from the partially collapsed remains that are there at the moment.
The project is one of the first major archaeological studies to routinely use new computing technologies. And these techniques are helping the team understand a building that's puzzled them for many years.
The circular building was literally in front of our eyes for a long period of time. And we've done quite a lot of research on circular buildings. And then one day we tried fitting a circular three-dimensional object and it didn't fit because it wasn't circular, it was elliptical. If it's elliptical, then you don't have many options, and an amphitheatre or a ludus is a good guess.
While you expect to find amphitheatres in towns or outside of towns, military camps, finding an amphitheatre at a port and right down by the harbour side is a little bit more unusual.
It was kind of a sudden change, I think, in how we understood that part of the site.
The closest parallel for our amphitheatre-shaped structure is not a formal amphitheatre like the Colosseum, but is more of a kind of practice arena, rather like the Ludus Magnus in Rome. So what I would see at Portus is somewhere where people trained to keep in form, perhaps a detachment of the Roman fire brigade, which we know existed at Portus, I think stationed close to the imperial palace complex, all contributing to make the palace itself a centre of authority within the port.
Even after years of study, the site still has a lot to offer. Early this summer, Professor Kay and the team were preparing the site for the new season.
Myself and 3 Italian colleagues were there, gently removing loose material, brushing the surfaces back, and it was at just that specific time that the face became visible. Quite extraordinary, actually, because it's the way in which the face was essentially exposed, looking directly at me, and it was kind of a little bit disquieting, I must say. You could kind of take the head, that face, to symbolise the kind of individual that would have been there, symbolising their way of life, which was tough and fairly unremitting. It's the kind of face you would expect to see on someone standing in Portus and perhaps helping unload a ship full of grain from Alexandria.
The Portus Project has added enormously to our understanding of the Roman world. What does the future hold?
This has a great story to tell. There is so much more to know when you consider that 90% of Portus is effectively unexplored. And what we've found in the work that we've been doing is a fantastic dynamism of development. An awful lot was going on at this port. The great thing about Portus is that much of it has been preserved, and there's an awful lot more work that can be done.
Want to know more? Then go to www.portusproject.org.